So, we need to have a talk, because coming up in the next week, about Tuesday, there's going to be a thing. It's called an election. It's kind of awesome. Basically what it is the peaceful overthrow of the current government we have. And you should really go out and do it, right? It's really cool, kind of amazing, part of your civic duty, and it's like totally bae. So, if you want to vote, you have to do certain things, right? Because in order to be one of the cool people, you need to meet certain criteria. At least, that's what the kids who didn't let me sit at their lunch table told me. So, in order to vote, there's 3 things you need to hit first. 1, you have to be 18. 2, you have to be a resident of the state and county you're voting in, and 3, you actually have to be registered to vote into that state. Now, you should already know these 3 things, but if you don't, let's just run down them really quick. 1, be 18. You should really know your age. I'm not sure why you wouldn't, but take 2016, subtract the year you were born in from that, and that should roughly give you the age, right? If that's too much hard for you, you can just go ask a resource teacher. And 2, be a resident in the state and county you're going to be living in. Chances are you're probably already a resident of this state because you're watching this video for a very specific high school. But if you moved here recently, don't worry, the requirements are you have to have existed in this location for about 6 months, 180 days, be enrolled in school, or be paying taxes. So if you meet any of those, you are a resident of the state. And then finally, you have to be registered to vote. And this is the hassle one. See, in order to prevent voter fraud, which isn't all that big of a problem because the election will not be rigged, don't worry. Indiana has a plan. It's called requiring people to register to vote. Now, the deadline for doing this was October 11th, so you have negative time to do that. And chances are you may have already done it though, because if you signed up for a driver's license or a learner's permit recently, oftentimes the DMV just gets your information and can sign you up to vote. At the same time, if you've enlisted for selected services during your 18th birthday, chances are you've registered to vote as well. But if you don't know, you can check on a website that will be linked below. So, once you've done all of those things, which is basically exist in a certain place for a certain time and fill out a little bit of paperwork that may have already been done for you, congrats, you can vote. Now, before you get to actually push those magic buttons that help you decide who exactly is going to be running the country for the next few days, there's a few other things you need to do or really should do. The first thing that you really should do is called research, because chances are there are going to be people running for offices that you didn't even know existed. And to help you with that, Indiana does this really cool thing. It's called a sample ballot. I have mine right here. You can also find your sample ballot at the same website where you can check to see if you're registered to vote, because where you live will determine who exactly appears on your ballot. And the first thing you're going to notice is there are people who aren't running for president on here. Like, seriously, there's about 3 pages of them. And those people are running for offices that you have no idea even existed. Like, they're running for District 44 Senator, and Coroner, and Surveyor. So they're running for a lot of positions that you may not even know were up for the running. And chances are you don't know who E.R. Gray or Larry S. Kleinsen is. So, you want to find out this sample ballot. Again, you can get at that website. It's super convenient. And then you can actually go out and do research. And there are a few ways you can do that. 1 is just Googling the candidates. 2, you can pick up a newspaper, which is this thing that probably your parents have a subscription to that's been delivered to your door. They have information about the candidates you can vote for on. So you can start doing a little bit of research and figuring out who you want to support. Or you can just blindly choose people based on party lines. I mean, that's fun too, right? And last thing to note is you don't actually have to vote for everyone on these tickets. So, if you don't know anything about being a coroner, you can just say, I don't know either of these people, I don't know what a coroner does, I'm not going to vote for it. Or, if you really hate all the people running for an office, like a lot of people do for president this year, you can just ignore that and vote for the other positions that also wield kind of immense power, like our senators and our representatives in the House of Representatives, or our governor who gets to decide what happens with Indiana's budgetary surplus henceforth. So there's a lot of important things you can be doing. So step 1 is do your research. And other really cool thing about the sample ballot, you can actually bring it into the polling booth with you. So if you've decided, okay, I've done my research on who I want as I need a race that's actually competitive. If you've found out you know who you want to be on the Edinburgh School Board, but you're confused about not remembering all 4 of those names and which ones you want, you can just highlight it, bring in the polling place with you, and then just copy and paste. It's basically like when a teacher gives you a test ahead of time. You can figure out all the answers and then carry that test into the test with you and just copy and paste down. Or you can just be one of the idiots who leaves it on their desks and doesn't take it home and fails the test, right? You have two very clear options here. So I recommend picking up your sample ballot and figuring out. But once you've figured out who you want to vote for, there's the next challenge, which is figuring out where to vote. Fortunately, there's a map of all of the polling places online. Now, a polling place is basically where all the cool kids go to do kickflips and play Nintendo while casting their ballots. So, Indiana's restricted those to a few places within Bartholomew County. There's a map online, we'll link to it below. And there are the addresses as well, so you can choose super convenient locations along your trips into school, or back home, or going to the grocery store, or whatever. Now, polling places typically open a little bit before school starts, and they stay open until about 5. So, it's a little bit difficult for some of you athletes and people who do other things to get out to vote. But don't worry, we've thought of that as well. The state of Indiana has early voting, which you can do every Saturday. Early voting is basically done at the courthouse. It's downtown. It's super convenient. You go through a metal detector. The guys are really nice. There are people who help you figure things out. So if you can't vote on that November 8th Tuesday, then don't worry. You can do it a little bit ahead of time by heading to the courthouse. Or you can figure out what polling place is most convenient to you. Vote on your way into school. Vote during the double or triple or quadruple lunch you have, or vote on your way home. And after that, then you need to realize what you actually need to bring into the polling place, because you figured out if you can vote, you figured out who you can vote for, you figured out where to vote, and then finally you get to figure out what exactly do I need to do to vote. Now, in order to get into the polling place, it's like a club, or like what I imagine a club is like, because there are two things. One, you need a ticket, and two, you need a dress code. So, Indiana, and again, to help prevent voter fraud, which isn't really that big of a problem, Indiana has this thing called a voter ID law. Basically, what it says is in order to vote, you need a valid state ID. So, driver's license, learner's permit, passport, military ID, all of those count. Library card, not so much. Boy Scout registration, not so much. Your East ID, not so much. You need one of those things. Driver's license, passport, learner's permit, military ID. One of those. And that gets you into the polling place. Then you have to deal with the bouncers. Typically they're old ladies who have very mean looks and very nice voices, but they still have the ability to bar you from voting because Indiana has a few laws about not campaigning in polling places. Otherwise you can just have people shouting at you to say vote for Hillary, vote for Trump, vote for Paula Rothrock for coroner. They can just be shouting all over you. So, Indiana passed a few laws, and you can't campaign in a polling place, which means if you have a Trump hat, you need to leave that in your truck. And if you have a I'm with her mug, that gets checked at the door. So this hat, vote for Kennedy? Nope, can't wear. This shirt, campaigning for a dirty, rotten scoundrel? Can't wear. So make sure you cover up. And then finally, like all clubs in Vegas, what happens in a polling place stays in a polling place. You cannot take pictures or record yourself. So while you may want to Snapchat or Instagram that you just cast your ballot, wait until you get outside of the booth to do that. They give you a little sticker to prove that you did. So, it's totally fine, you can still prove that you did your civic duty. And that is how you vote, very briefly. But finally, there's the brief question of why. And if you haven't thought of that, well, think of it like this. You're electing prom king and queen, but prom king and queen get to decide how much you pay for lunch money, they get to raise your taxes, they get to determine the quality of the streets you drive on, they get to help the hall monitors determine who to beat up and not beat up. So, it's basically a popularity contest, only where the winners wield immense power. And the decisions are made by the people who show up. And you want to be one of the people who shows up. So figure out if you are registered. Print out your sample ballot. Do your research. Go to the polling place. Wear the appropriate clothing. And cast your vote. Because if you do all that, if and only if you do all that, do you have your right to complain. So go vote.